Have you heard the stories about Fear Street? There are places people tell stories about. Strange stories. Stories that can only be told in whispers. Stories of ghosts and other creatures. Stories that could never be true, but are. Fear Street is one of those places. Randy Clay has a story to tell you about Fear Street. A story about a hide-and-seek game she is forced to play with a ghost. Randy knows she has to win the game, or she will be the newest ghost on Fear Street. Are you ready to hear Randy's story? Hide and Shriek, Chapter 1. Randy, Randy! My little sister, Baby, wiggled into my room. Mom says she's going to kill you. She giggled. She loves to see me get into trouble, mostly because she's always in trouble herself. I ignored Baby and yelled down the stairs at my mother. Stop bugging me, Mom. I'm coming. You're going to be late, Mom yelled back. I know, I can't help it. It was my first day at Shadyside Middle School. I didn't want to be late, but I didn't want to show up looking like a dork either. I tried on everything in my closet. Nothing looked right. All my clothes looked babyish on me, which is the last thing I need. I'm 12, but people always think I'm younger. I don't see it myself. I think I have a very mature face. I'm small and wiry, but I'm not that small. I wasn't even the smallest girl in my class at my old school. Some people are so stupid. They don't look at the facts. I stared at myself in the mirror, tugging at the waist of my jeans. What did the kids in Shadyside wear anyway? I had no clue. I'd only lived here for 2 days. My family, me, Mom, Dad, and my insane little sister, just moved to Shadyside from Maine. We live on Fear Street. It's a weird name for a street, I think. Fear Street. It's not exactly cheery. Even Shadysiders seem to think the street name is weird. The day we moved in, I went to the post office with Mom, and the clerk gave us a funny look when Mom mentioned our address. The clerk raised her eyebrows and said, Fear Street, I thought the clerk was pretty weird herself. She stared at me really hard when they asked how old I was. 12, I told her. Then you might be the one, she commented. My mom and I exchanged confused glances. The one what? I couldn't resist asking. You'll find out soon enough, if you aren't careful, she answered mysteriously. June 10th is right around the corner. You've moved to town at the perfect time. Yeah, right, I thought. It's great starting a new school at the end of the year. I had to finish the last month of 6th grade in a new school with a bunch of kids I didn't know, and who didn't know me, and who will take one look at me today, I thought, and decide right then and there if I'm cool or not. I yanked off my jeans and tried on my gray jumper again. I wasn't sure if it looked good with my brown hair. Mom stormed in. Randy, if you try on another stitch of clothing, I'll scream. You're wearing that jumper, and that's final. Tell her, Mom, Baby said. I made a face at Baby. She made one back at me. Girls, Mom snapped. Mom could be tough when she wanted to be. The jumper would have to do. I grabbed my backpack and raced out of the house. Baby screeched after me. You're going to be late. You're going to be late. She laughed. Anybody want to adopt a 7-year-old girl? I hurried down Fear Street and around the corner to Park Drive. When I got to Hawthorne, I started running. Shadyside Middle School loomed ahead. The front doors were closed, and the schoolyard stood empty. I was definitely late. Something about the sight of that empty schoolyard made my stomach flip over. Nervous, I guess. I ran up the steps and tugged on the door. Locked. I panicked. Locked out on my first day? Please don't let this be true. I yanked on the door again. It didn't budge. I almost burst into tears. What was I going to do? I told myself to calm down. It can't be locked, I said to myself. They wouldn't lock all the kids inside the school, right? No, they wouldn't. It helps to think things through like that. Sometimes I get kind of panicky, you know, carried away by my imagination. But I also have a sensible side. I can look at the facts. It helps keep my imagination from taking over. I gave the door one last pull, and this time it flew open. My sensible side was right, I thought. As usual, the door sticks. No reason to get upset. My footsteps echoed as I stepped into a long, empty hallway. I shifted my backpack and nervously twirled my hair around a finger. I was supposed to report to the principal's office, but I had no idea where it was. I passed row after row of classroom doors, all closed. Through the doors, I heard teachers' voices and the shuffling of chairs. It made the silence of the hallway seem lonelier. I hope I won't get into trouble for being late, I thought nervously. They wouldn't punish a kid on her first day, would they? I passed a big bulletin board stuck to one wall. It was covered with announcements and end-of-the-year awards. In one corner, someone had tacked a large calendar. It showed the months of May and June, with all the dates X'd out up to that day, May 22nd. One date had been circled in red felt tip, Saturday, June 10th. I wonder if there was a big game that day. Something about the 10th of June felt familiar. I'd heard something about it somewhere, I knew. The creepy woman in the post office, I remembered. She mentioned that date. Then I noticed a scrawl at the top of the calendar. 18 more days until Pete's birthday. The number was removable, so it could be changed as time passed. Wow, I thought. I wonder who Pete is. He must be pretty popular if the whole school is looking forward to his birthday. I tore my eyes away from the bulletin board and turned a corner. Oh! I gasped, stopping short. My feet slipped a little on the shiny floor. A boy staggered toward me, but not a normal boy. He stumbled forward, clutching his head. His face looked odd, greenish. He must be sick, I thought. What's the matter? I asked. What happened? He moaned in pain. Help! He croaked. Deep red blood oozed from a hideous gash in his head. I screamed as the boy lurched toward me. Chapter 2. Help! I cried. I tried to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The boy fell forward, his hands sticky with blood. I dodged him. He slumped over, groaning. My head! The pain! Feeling a little queasy, I bent over the boy. Are you all right? I asked. What a stupid question. Blood trickled down his face. Anybody could see he wasn't all right. The boy groaned louder. A teacher opened her door and stuck her head into the hallway. What's all the noise out here? She demanded. The bleeding boy suddenly straightened up. Sorry, Miss Munson, he said. He hurried away, looking strangely healthy. Miss Munson stared at me. You, where are you supposed to be? I'm new, I stammered. Where's the principal's office? The expression on her face softened a little. Down this hall and to the right. Welcome to Shadyside. She shut the door. I started for the office. What happened to the bleeding boy, I wondered. I heard a rustling noise, and a tall girl turned the corner and swished toward me. The girl wore a long green dress with a hoop skirt. Her brown hair was tucked under a white lace bonnet. What a weird school, I thought. The girl stopped. Did you see a boy go by? She asked me. With blood coming out of his head? I nodded. What happened to him? The girl laughed. Nothing happened to him. It's a costume. We're in the school play, and Lucas plays a guy who gets killed. Oh, I said, relieved. We have dress rehearsal this morning, the girl said. I've got to run. She paused. Are you new? I've never seen you before. I smiled. I'm Randy Clay. This is my first day. Really? The girl said. So you're new. You're really new? Yes, I answered confused. I'm new. What's the big deal? Wow, I've got to go, the girl said. I'm late. Nice meeting you, Randy. My name's Sarah Lewis. Hope I'll see you later. Bye. She ran down the hall, her skirts floating behind her. I trudged towards the principal's office, shaking my head. What's going on, I wondered. Why is everybody so strange? I stood outside the door of my 6th grade class and took a deep breath. I was about to meet the kids who would be my friends from now on, if they liked me, and if I liked them. I pulled open the door and stepped inside. The teacher, a small young woman with short dark hair, turned away from the blackboard. She smiled at me. Miranda Clay? The teacher asked. I nodded. Everybody calls me Randy. I'm Miss Hartman. Welcome. Why don't you take that empty seat in the 3rd row? As I started for the empty seat, a buzz arose in the room. The kids stared at me and whispered to one another. I tried to tell myself not to feel weird about it. They're just wondering who I am, I thought. I sat next to a pretty girl with wavy blonde hair. The girl stared at me wide-eyed. Hi, I said to her. The girl's eyes grew wider. She turned away from me and whispered to the red-headed girl next to her. What is it, I wondered. Why are they whispering? Maybe they're not whispering about me, I thought. I'm probably being too sensitive. Let's settle down, Miss Hartman called. The whispering gradually stopped. Miss Hartman said to me, You'll be taking the final exams during the last week of school. Have you ever taken a final exam before, Randy? I shook my head. Don't worry. No one else in the 6th grade class has either. Right now we're going over good ways to study and prepare. It's best not to save it until the last minute. As the teacher spoke, I glanced around the room. The other kids didn't seem to be paying much attention to Miss Hartman's study tips. Some of them were staring at me, or stealing glances at me out of the corners of their eyes. The two girls sitting next to me started whispering again. At last, a bell rang and we had recess. Most kids hurried outside. A couple of kids nodded to me and said hi. "Do you play softball?" a girl asked me as we moved into the hall. She was big, with long dark hair and a braid down her back. A tall blond boy stood beside her. "A little," I answered. "We want to set up a co-ed softball team to play over the summer," the boy explained. He had an easy, friendly smile. I thought he was kind of cute. "I'm Megan," the girl added, "and this is David." "Hi," I said. "I'll go to the gym and borrow a bat," David said. "Maybe we can hit a few during recess." "Let's wait for him outside," Megan suggested. We stepped into the bright sunlight. A few feet ahead of me, I noticed the blonde girl, Laura, and her friend Maggie. They turned around. Laura pointed at me. I tried to ignore them, but it bothered me. What's their problem, I wondered. "I'll be right back," I told Megan. I hurried inside and ran to the girls' bathroom. Is something wrong with me, I thought? Have I got something stuck in my teeth? Is my hair sticking up? I quickly checked myself out in the mirror. I didn't have a huge pimple on my nose, or big purple blotches on my cheeks, or a sign on my forehead saying nutcase. Nothing like that. Nothing to explain the way the two girls were behaving. I hurried back outside. Megan had gathered a bunch of kids together for softball. Sarah, the girl I met in the hall, was one of them. David returned with a bat and ball. "Why don't you play shortstop?" he suggested to me. "I always end up playing shortstop. Is there some rule that shortstops have to be short? Anyway, I'm good at it from all the practice I get." Laura and Maggie didn't play softball. They stood on the sidelines and watched. The next day, I saw Sarah standing by the big bulletin board in the hall. She had a pen in her hand and was reading a notice on the board. "Hi," I said. "What's up?" She smiled. "Hi, Randy." She pointed at the notice she was reading. "I think I might sign up for this." The notice said, "Volunteers needed to make Pete's birthday cake. Sign your name here." That Pete guy again. I couldn't believe it. People were actually signing up to bake him a cake. "What is this?" I asked Sarah. "Who's Pete?" "Don't you know?" Sarah said. "Well..." Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me, hot breath on my neck. I jumped and quickly turned around. Sarah turned too. Laura stood there, reading over our shoulders. She'd crept up behind us so silently we didn't notice her until we felt her breath on our necks. She glanced at the sign-up sheet. She raised an eyebrow. Then she whispered something to me. It sounded more like a hiss than a whisper. Could Laura have really said such a mean thing to me? It sounded as if she'd whispered, "You better watch out." Chapter 3. I wandered through the crowded cafeteria a few days later, looking for Sarah or Megan or David. All around me kids shouted, laughed, and joked, filling the room with noise. I relaxed a little. For once this school feels normal, I thought. All week I felt like an exhibit in a zoo. Everyone's staring at the new girl. Then I spotted Laura and Maggie. Maggie seemed to be Laura's sidekick or something. I'd never seen her even talking to anyone else. It was pathetic. Clutching my tray, I passed Laura and Maggie's table. "Just wait," Laura murmured. "Just wait until the 10th. My hands began to shake. This time I knew I hadn't imagined it. Was Laura threatening me? What would happen on the 10th? I knew June 10th was Pete's birthday, but I still didn't know who Pete was. I didn't know what to do. My hand shook so hard I was afraid I'd drop my tray in the middle of the lunchroom. Then I saw someone waving to me from across the room, a skinny boy with curly black hair. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. I had to do something. Anything. I wanted to get away from Laura and Maggie as fast as possible, so I hurried toward the boy. "Hi," he said. "Want to sit with me?" "Sure," I replied. I still didn't know who the boy was, but he seemed to know me. "I guess I scared you the other day," the boy said. "Sorry about that. It's like my costume takes over my personality." I stared at him. What was he talking about? "By the way," he went on, picking up his sandwich, "my name's Lucas." Lucas, I thought. It sounded familiar. Oh yes, Lucas, the boy with the bloodied head. "I'm Randy," I told him. "I didn't recognize you at first. I mean, without blood dripping down your face." Lucas laughed. "Are you coming to see the play?" he asked me. "It's during the last week of school." "Sure," I said. "What's it about?" It's a Sherlock Holmes mystery, Lucas answered. The guy who plays Sherlock keeps messing up his lines. You know David Slater? Yeah, he's in my class. He's the star of the play, Lucas said, but he's terrible. I don't know why they picked him. I opened my brown paper lunch bag and pulled out an apple. I like to eat my dessert first. That's too bad, I said between bites. I glanced across the room and caught Laura and Maggie watching me. They quickly turned their heads away. So where do you live? Lucas asked. On Fear Street, I replied. Really? I live on Fear Street too. Don't listen to the stories people tell about it. I've lived there all my life, and nothing bad has ever happened to me. Stories? What stories? I asked. Lucas shrugged. People tell these crazy stories about Fear Street, probably because of the name. It is a creepy name for a street, I admitted. Know that cemetery down the road? Lucas said. Some kids say it's haunted. My next-door neighbor told me he was riding his bike past there just before dark. He said a tall woman suddenly appeared and blocked his path, but he didn't have time to stop. He slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. What happened? Was she hurt? That's the weird part, Lucas told me. He says, if you believe him, that his bike went right through her, as if she were made of air. Wow, was she a ghost? Lucas rolled his eyes. Who knows? I think he was trying to scare me. I've never seen any ghosts around there myself. I unwrapped my turkey sandwich, but didn't bite into it. I'm sure Lucas is right, I thought. People just like to tell scary stories. But I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. The name Fear Street had to come from something bad that had happened there, didn't it? I tilted my head back to catch the sunlight on my face. It felt good to be outside after a long day cooped up in school. I walked home alone down Hawthorne Drive. My backpack, filled with all my new school books, hung heavily from my shoulders. I'll use these books for a month, and then school's over, I thought. It's kind of stupid. Deep, thick woods stretched out on my right, all the way to Fear Street, where I lived. I could cut through the woods, I thought. It's probably the quickest way home. I stepped off the sidewalk and into the woods. Darkness and quiet seemed to fall upon me like a blanket. The warm sunlight vanished. I suddenly felt chilly. The hair rose on my arms. I rubbed them, shivering. It's so quiet in here, I thought, glancing around at the tall trees and thick shrubs. No chirps or peeps or animal screeches. Why aren't there any birds or squirrels? I found a little dirt path that seemed to take me in the right direction. I trudged along the path. The only sound was the crunch of twigs and leaves under my feet. Crunch, 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 crunch. I walked for 10 minutes before the woods began to thin. I must be getting near the street again, I thought with a relief, but I didn't hear the sounds of cars or people. I came to a large clearing. Slabs of stone rose out of the ground. Gravestones. It's a cemetery, I realized. I felt cold again. Don't get scared, I scolded myself. The street is on the other side of the cemetery, just beyond the woods. You're almost home. No big deal, I thought. So you're walking through a cemetery. So what? Find the facts. After all, they're only dead people. Dead people can't hurt you, because they're dead, right? I hurried past crumbling stone markers without stopping to read the names on them. I should be almost to my street, I thought. Still, the only sound I heard was the crackle of twigs under my feet. Crunch, 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 crunch. But then I thought I heard another sound, a sound I didn't want to hear. I froze, listening. I scanned the cemetery and the woods beyond. I didn't see anyone. Nothing moved, not even the leaves. I walked on. Crunch, 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 crunch. Then I heard it again. What was it? I stopped, waited. Nothing. Warily watching the edge of the woods, I took a sideways step. Something brushed my backpack. Oh! I screamed and wheeled around. I saw a wrinkled old face laughing at me. An old man. No, a statue. The statue of a dead old man, sitting on top of his grave, laughing like a maniac. Laughing at me, I thought. I've got to get out of here. I picked up my pace. Crunch, 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 crunch. But I heard it again. A giggle, or a laugh. A boy's laugh. And footsteps, right behind me. Chapter 4. I spun around. No one there. I listened. Not a sound. I've had enough, I murmured to myself. Facts or no facts, I'm getting out of here. I ran out of the cemetery as fast as I could. I passed through another patch of woods and found myself on Fear Street at last, a few steps away from my house. I sprinted onto the porch, yanked open the door, and slammed it behind me. I tossed my backpack at the foot of the stairs, safely home. The smell of spaghetti sauce drifted out of the kitchen. I must have imagined those sounds, I thought. Maybe I heard an echo of my own footsteps, or wind in the trees. "Randy, is that you?" Mom called from the den. "I'm in here with baby." "That's Barbara," my little sister shrieked. "From now on, everybody has to call me Barbara. No one is allowed to call me baby anymore." All right, Mom cooed. "It'll take time to get used to it, that's all." I found my mother and sister watching cartoons together on the sofa. Mom had changed from her nurse's uniform into dark blue sweatpants and a sweater. She's a little chubby, with long brown hair that she always wears in a ponytail. Baby's pale, knobby knees poked out of short denim overalls. "I'm 7 years old now," Baby hollered at me in her shrill, high-pitched voice. "I'm not a baby anymore." "I hear you," I said. "You don't have to yell, baby." "Barbara," Baby screamed. "Don't tease her, Randy," Mom scolded. "Could you check the spaghetti sauce for me? Just make sure it's not bubbling over." "From now on, call me Clarissa," I joked as I headed for the kitchen. I lifted the lid on the saucepan. The spaghetti sauce smelled great. "The sauce is fine," I told my mother, settling beside Baby on the couch. "How was school?" Mom asked me. "I love my teacher," Baby announced. "His name is Mr. Pine. I'm in love with him." "I'm happy for you, Baby, but I'm talking to Randy right now," Mom said. "That's Barbara." "School's okay," I replied. "I've met a lot of nice kids, but a few of them seem weird." "I'm sure they're nice once you get to know them," Mom assured me. "I'm going to marry Mr. Pine." Baby bounced on the couch. "And then I'm going to kiss him." "What if he's already married?" I teased. Baby frowned. "That's impossible. He's mine. Mine. She jumped up and down on the couch like a wild thing. Her shaggy black hair bounced with her. She landed on my thigh. "Ow!" I cried. "Stop it, Baby." "Mom, has she been eating out of the sugar bowl again?" "Sit down, Baby," Mom commanded. "Look, Batman's on." Batman was Baby's favorite show. She bounced one last time, landing in a sitting position on the couch. "My name is Barbara," she insisted. "Everyone has to shut up now. Batman's on." "Why is she so hyper?" I complained. "She acts like a maniac." Mom patted my knee. "She's excited because of the move and her new school and everything. She'll settle down." "No talking," Baby ordered. "Batman's on." "Oh, please," I mumbled, standing up. "I'm going to my room. Call me when dinner's ready." I picked up my heavy backpack and hauled it upstairs to my room. I dropped my backpack on my desk, kicked the door shut, and flopped onto the bed. From there, I could look out of the window. My room faced the street. Across the street stood a bunch of two-story houses, a lot like ours. One was painted yellow, another pale blue, another a rusty red-brown. Beyond those houses, I saw the beginning of the woods I had walked through. I couldn't see the cemetery, but I knew it wasn't far away. "You heard the wind in the trees," I told myself firmly. "Or a squirrel, maybe. There's nothing to be afraid of in that cemetery. Nothing to be afraid of at all," I told myself. Why didn't I believe it? Chapter 5. "Hey, Randy, catch!" I turned around. A big leather ball hit me in the stomach. "Ooh!" I clutched my belly. The ball dropped to the floor. "Sorry, Randy," Sarah called. "Didn't mean to catch you by surprise." I couldn't answer her right away. She knocked the wind out of me. Miss Mason, the gym teacher, had gotten out all this old gym equipment and told us to play with it. I guess she hadn't made a lesson plan for that day. So Sarah had heaved the medicine ball at me. It's like a beach ball made of lead. Tossing it around is supposed to make your arm strong, I think. But I was tired that day, and kind of a klutz. If I don't get a good night's sleep, I'm completely brain dead. I hadn't slept well since we moved to Fear Street. "Randy, are you all right?" Sarah looked scared now. I nodded and straightened up. "I'm okay. Maybe we should play with hula hoops for a while. They look safe." Sarah grabbed a hot pink hula hoop. I took an orange one. I rocked back on one leg and whirled the hoop around my waist. I frantically swiveled my hips. Shoot, shoot, shoot. The hoop slid down my thighs, my knees, and my ankles. The little beads rattled inside as it hit the floor. I could never hula hoop. Meanwhile, Sarah shooped away. "How do you do that?" I asked. "It's easy," she said with a shrug. "You just do it." I picked mine up and tried again. Shoop, 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 clatter, straight down to the floor. "You want to come to my house this Saturday?" Sarah asked me as she hulaed. "I'm having a sleepover." I was so happy, I almost shouted my answer. "Sure, that would be great." Maybe at the sleepover I'd get to know some of the other girls, and soon I'd have a whole crowd of friends. Laura shimmied past me then, twirling a baton. Better get in shape, Randy, she murmured, or else find a good place to hide. I glanced at Sarah. Her eyes widened. She's not going to be at the sleepover, is she? I asked. No, Sarah replied. Good, I said. What is she talking about? She said something like that to me last week. Why is she always telling me to watch out? Sarah let her hula hoop clatter to the floor. It's hard to explain, Randy. What do you mean, it's hard to explain? Can't you give me a hint at least? I hadn't meant to be funny, but Sarah laughed. All I mean is, it's a long story, she answered. You'll find out more on Saturday. I pressed on. Tell me this much. Am I in some kind of trouble? Sarah shook her head. No more than anyone else, Randy. At least, I don't think so. Gym class finally ended. Sarah and I changed and went to art class. We went to teachers besides Miss Hartman for a couple of subjects. We sat at a table with Megan and David and molded wet gray globs of clay into bowls and cups and saucers. Is this play going to be any good, you guys? Megan asked. Sherlock Holmes sounds kind of boring to me. It's going to be great, Sarah told us. Everyone in it is really good. Don't you think, David? Yeah, David agreed, smoothing out the lines of a mug he was making. Except for Lucas. He's a ham. I think Lucas is pretty good, Sarah said. She poked dots around the rim of a saucer. Anyway, his part isn't very big. Basically, he gets stabbed by the killer and then lies there while you check out the scene for clues. Playing a corpse should be easy enough for Lucas. How bad could he be? I saw Lucas in his makeup, I put in. He almost scared me to death. He's terrible, David insisted. All that moaning and shaking, he practically wrecks the play. Come on, David, Megan scoffed. He can't be that bad. Okay, he's not that bad, David admitted. But he's still the worst thing in the play. That's probably why he has the smallest part, Sarah said. We all laughed. I felt happy. My second week at school, and I already had some friends, and Sarah's sleepover was only 2 days away. Sarah lived in a big brick house in North Hills. Dad parked out front and went inside with me to meet the Lewises. My dad's tall and dark-haired and athletic. He wears ugly black-rimmed glasses, but I think he's handsome anyway. He wears jeans and tweed jackets and looks like a professor, but he's really a computer programmer. Mr. and Miss Lewis led us into the living room. Some other parents were sitting there, drinking coffee. Welcome to Shadyside, Miss Lewis said when she shook Dad's hand. She was tiny and neat. She looked funny next to her husband, who was as tall as Dad. Sarah tells me you just moved here from Maine. Mr. Lewis handed my dad a cup of coffee and turned to me. Why don't you take your things down to the basement, Randy? The other girls are already getting settled down there. Dad leaned over to kiss me goodbye. Look out for the octopus, he whispered. He was thinking of the first time I went to a friend's house to sleep over, my friend Tanya's house. Tanya had weird parents. They served us octopus for dinner. When Tanya and I got into bed, I kept thinking about the octopus. I felt sure the dead octopus's tentacles were going to reach out from under the bed. They'd grab me, and the octopus ghost would get its revenge by eating me. I started crying. I called my parents and begged them to come and take me home. Tanya thought I didn't like her anymore. I was only 7 years old at the time. That was before I decided not to let my imagination run away with me. Before I realized you have to look at the facts. You'd think Dad would have forgotten about it by now. I wish he'd let me forget it. Very funny, Dad, I sniffed. I carried my sleeping bag through the kitchen and down to the basement. Randy's here, Sarah called as I came down the steps. Our basement is like a dungeon, but the Lewises was all fixed up with a TV and VCR, a stereo, even a kitchenette in one corner. The floor was carpeted, and travel posters covered the walls. Nothing scary about this basement at all. Sarah introduced me to the other girls, Megan, Anita, Carla, and her twin sister, Chris. I already knew Megan, of course, and I'd seen Anita in gym. Spread out your sleeping bag, Sarah said. We're going to make popcorn and watch a horror movie. I searched for a spot for my sleeping bag. At slumber parties, your sleeping bag spot can be a big deal. Back in Maine, Tanya and I always put ours next to each other. The other girls had already spread their sleeping bags out over the carpet. Chris and Carla zipped theirs together to make it a double. The sleeping bags formed a rough semicircle in front of the TV. I unrolled my bag in the middle. Sarah made popcorn in the microwave. Miss Lewis appeared at the foot of the stairs. Having fun, girls? She asked. I won't bother you any more, but you know where to find me if you need me. Don't stay up too late. Right, Mom, Sarah said. And try not to make too much noise. Sarah's little brothers will be going to bed soon. If they can't sleep, I'm going to send them down here to play with you. And I know you don't want that. She's bluffing, Sarah said. I am not, her mother replied. Well, good night, girls. Have a good night. She waved and tapped her way upstairs in her high-heeled shoes. Your mother's so nice, Sarah, Chris said. Sarah rolled her eyes. You should hear her when I come home late. We all giggled. The timer on the microwave went off, and soon Sarah sat a big bowl of popcorn beside me. What movie are we going to watch? I asked. Dracula, Sarah answered. Chris groaned. Do we have to watch a scary movie? I get scared really easily. You can go upstairs and hang out with my mother if you want, Sarah teased, since you're so crazy about her. Chris, you moron, Carla said. We already saw Dracula, and you said it wasn't scary at all. Oh yeah, I forgot. Chris smiled sheepishly. She seemed like a nice girl, but kind of spacey. She and Carla looked exactly alike. Round faces, big dark eyes, ski-jump noses. Except that Carla wore her frizzy black hair short, and Chris kept hers in 2 thick braids. So far, that was the only way I could tell them apart. We put on our pajamas and settled into our sleeping bags. Sarah slid the tape into the VCR and turned out the lights. The movie began. It was an old black and white version of Dracula. I think black and white movies are scarier than color. They're so shadowy and dark. Dracula sank his fangs into victims' necks. The hair prickled on the back of mine. It's not real blood, I told myself. It's only chocolate syrup. When the movie ended, Sarah didn't turn on the lights. We sat and talked in the glow of the television set. The screen showed nothing but fuzz and static now. That wasn't scary at all, Chris declared. Oh, right, Carla countered. And you didn't dig your nails into my arm the whole time? She flashed her forearm, showing us the marks her sister's nails had made. Dracula's not as scary as Pete, Anita said. The room went quiet all of a sudden. I had that feeling, the feeling I'd had ever since I moved to Shadyside, that everyone knew something I didn't. I broke the silence. Who's Pete? No one answered. Chapter 6. Who's Pete? I asked again. Is that the guy with the hockey mask? Everyone laughed, but it sounded sort of phony. Pete's not a character in a movie, Anita told me. He's real. Real? I said. Who is he? No one answered right away. The other girls glanced at each other. They wouldn't look me in the eye. They're just trying to scare me, I told myself. Don't panic. Wait for the facts. The 10th's almost here, Chris whispered. 1 week from tonight. The 10th. Not that again. What's going on? I demanded. What's happening on the 10th? Silence. Why won't anybody tell me? I wailed. Still, the girls kept quiet. I watched their faces in the gray-blue light of the TV. You'll have to find out sooner or later, Anita said. Tell me, I insisted. It's not fair to keep it from her, Chris said. Another silence. Sarah stood up and got a candle. She lit it and placed it on the floor in the middle of the semicircle. She switched off the TV. Then Anita spoke. Pete was a boy who lived in Shadyside a long, long time ago, she said in a low voice. He died on his 12th birthday. He died in the Fear Street woods. The candlelight flickered across the girls' faces. They had probably heard the story of Pete 1,000 times before, I guessed, but it still held them spellbound. No one knows how he died, Anita went on. His body was found one morning, all shriveled up. His parents gave him a funeral. They buried him in the cemetery. They thought that was the end of Pete. But 1 year later, 1 year to the day after Pete died, some kids were playing hide-and-seek in the Fear Street woods. All of a sudden, a girl started screaming. It's Pete! She shrieked. I saw Pete! The kids ran screaming out of the woods. Pete had been playing hide-and-seek with them. Anita paused for a long moment. One boy left that game completely changed. He began to stay up late at night, howling like an animal. He ran off by himself into the woods. No one knew what he did there, but they knew the boy was not the same. Exactly 1 year later, that boy seemed to snap out of it. He stopped going out at night. He stopped going outside at all. He was too scared. The boy stayed in bed all day, shaking. His eyes never blinked. He held them wide open all the time, as if he were always terrified. And overnight, his hair had turned from dark brown to white. He looked like an old man. A doctor came to examine him. The boy told the doctor that Pete tagged him in the game, and then got to control his body every night. For 1 year, Pete had made the boy do these gross, disturbing things. Pete even made the boy sleep in the cemetery sometimes. Then Pete left. No one believed the boy, of course. But then the same thing happened to another kid in town, and the next year, another. People began to get scared. Soon, no children were ever allowed to play in the Fear Street woods. But that didn't stop Pete. The next year, when no children came to play hide and seek on Pete's birthday, Pete got angry. Pete got very angry, and bad things started to happen. One girl looked into the mirror and saw her face rotting away. Her skin was all green, and her teeth were black. Another kid kept smelling something so putrid that he couldn't eat. Every time he tried, he would gag. He kept getting thinner and thinner. Some kids' pets disappeared. Some kids heard a boy yelling, "Ready or not, here I come," over and over until they almost went crazy. No one could say for sure that Pete caused the bad things to happen, but they stopped when the kids finally returned to the woods to play the game. Anita stared at Randy with a serious expression on her face. Now, every year on the 10th of June, we all celebrate Pete's birthday. We go into the Fear Street woods and play hide and seek. Pete is it. The first person Pete tags is the loser. Pete takes over his body for the rest of the year. That kid has to watch while Pete does whatever he wants every single night. Pete wants a body to live in, a real live body. He doesn't want to be a ghost. He wants to be alive. Every year he takes a new kid's body. This year, it's going to be one of us. Not one of us moved. I watched the candlelight play on Anita's face. Maybe she was pretending, but she looked scared. It's just a story, I thought to myself. It has to be. And I thought Pete was some super popular kid at Shadyside Middle School. Sarah broke the silence. That's what the legend says anyway. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my reaction. Wow, I said. That's a good story, I guess. It's true, Anita insisted. On June the 10th, Pete is going to tag someone we know. Maybe one of us. I hope it's not me, Chris said. I heard Pete makes you run through the woods all night long. He keeps you up all night so you're really tired the next day. Chris was such a ditz. Carla gave her a punch on the shoulder. That's not so scary, I commented. Well, I heard he kills animals and eats them, Sarah said. Remember that time Jeff Walker's dog disappeared? A lot of people thought Pete got him. Ew. I was starting to feel a little sick. Anita pulled a strand of her brown hair out of her mouth. I could tell she believed in Pete and was afraid of him. He goes to the cemetery at night and the Fear Street woods. He howls like an animal. He becomes wild. When our grandfather was a kid, his best friend got tagged, Chris said. When the year was over, he went crazy. He ended up in an insane asylum. Carla rolled her eyes. Only you would fall for Grandpa's old stories, Chris. It's true, Chris insisted. My older sister played a few years ago, Anita put in. She said that after the game, this one girl's hair turned completely white, just like in the legend. She looked like a little old lady. I heard about a boy who stopped talking completely, Sarah said. Pete took over his body, and the boy never said another word. He just wandered the streets. His jaw shook and his eyes rolled around in his head. He never recovered. The things Pete made him do were so terrible, Anita added. So horrible, he couldn't talk about it. He couldn't talk at all. How awful, I thought. Panic rose in my throat, but I pushed it down. Facts, I told myself. These are just stories. You need facts. Megan touched my arm and looked me straight in the eye now. The thing is, Randy, you're in more danger than the rest of us. That prickly feeling on the back of my neck returned. I am? Why? She leaned forward and whispered in a strange low voice. Because Pete likes new kids. That's why. The candle flickered, then went out. A scream cut through the darkness. Chapter 7. The basement went pitch black. We all huddled together, clutching one another and screaming. Then, through the screaming, I thought I heard laughter. Sarah must have heard it too. She said, Joseph? Paul? Is that you? She crawled to a side table and fumbled for the light switch. The light came on. Against the wall by the stairs crouched two little boys in feety pajamas. They slumped over, laughing. I should have known, Sarah huffed. It's only my stupid little brothers. They giggled as she chased them up the stairs. Just wait till your Cub Scout sleepover, she shouted after them. You're going to be sorry. You're going to wish you'd joined the Campfire Girls. She returned to the semicircle of sleeping bags, scowling. Don't yell at them, Sarah, Chris said. I think your little brothers are adorable. You can have them, Sarah answered. Take them and Mom, too. Should we watch another movie? Carla asked. Or maybe there's something good on TV. Wait a second, I cut in. I want to hear more about Pete. It's just an old story, Randy, Sarah assured me. You don't have to worry. We were just trying to scare you. She paused. Right, everybody? No one said a word. Anita's big blue eyes watched Sarah a little fearfully. Anita, Megan teased. Only one more week to go. People don't tell all these stories about Pete for no reason, Anita insisted. They're true. I'm sure they are. Come on, Anita, Carla said. You'll believe anything. Remember that time Megan told you her teeth were really dentures? You fell for it. Anita's eyes flashed, but she blushed. Stop teasing Anita, Sarah said. If you don't believe in Pete, Carla, why are you playing in the game? Why would anybody play this game? I demanded. That's the part I don't get. I mean, if there's really a ghost named Pete who can take over your body, why take a chance? Chris flashed me her dippy smile. Because it's fun. It's not that scary, Megan insisted. It's kind of cool, like going to a haunted house on Halloween. You hear about it from the older kids when you're little, so you look forward to it. When you're old enough to play, you get to scare the little kids with it. Everybody talks about it afterward, Carla said. Creepy things happen in the woods, but funny things too. I'd hate to miss it. And if you don't play, Chris added, everybody thinks you're a wimp. You have to play, Randy, Sarah said. Everybody plays. The other girls laughed. Watch out, Randy, Megan murmured. Pete is going to choose you. Carla giggled. Don't forget, Pete likes new kids, Randy. You better practice running, Chris added. You have to run pretty fast to get away from a ghost. They all giggled, teasing and poking me. I pretended to laugh along, but inside I felt worried and scared. It's just a game, I told myself. An old tradition. But what if there were more to it? If this legend is true, I began, that means Pete must be living in some kid's body now, right? Maybe somebody we know. That's right, Randy, Megan taunted. Pete could be sitting next to you in school. Or in this very basement, Chris added. It could be me, Sarah cried. Or me, Carla said. Or me, Megan shouted, grabbing me. I yelped. The other girls laughed. Randy, watch out. Pete's right behind you. Carla pointed and pretended to look scared. The other girls cracked up. Is any of this true, I wondered? Or are they just trying to scare me? Facts. That's what I needed. Cold, hard facts. I'm going to investigate, I decided. I'm going to find out the truth. At school on Monday morning, all I could think about was Pete and the hide-and-seek game coming up. I passed the bulletin board. More days were X'd out. 5 more days to Pete's birthday. I kept remembering the stories I'd heard at Sarah's sleepover, about how Pete takes somebody's body and uses it at night to do weird, gross things. Whoever's body he uses, I figured, must be pretty tired all day. I stared into kids' faces, looking for circles under their eyes. It turned out a lot of kids at Shadyside Middle School looked a little tired. I don't know what they were doing all night. Worrying about Pete, maybe. I noticed Laura and Maggie glancing around warily. Maybe they're trying to figure out whose body Pete lives in too, I thought. Laura sneered when she saw me. You're doomed, new girl, she called. At least now I knew what she was talking about. At lunchtime, I threaded my way through the crowded halls to my locker. I needed to get my lunch bag. From halfway down the hall, I saw a tall, skinny boy leaning against my locker. Who's that, I wondered. I think I might need glasses. I don't see too well from far away. I moved a little closer. Lucas? What's he doing? I wondered, approaching my locker. Is he waiting for me? Why would he be waiting for me? I thought nervously. What does he want? I took a deep breath and strode over to my locker. He noticed me and straightened up. He was waiting for me. Hi, Randy. Hi, Lucas. I busied myself with my combination lock. I missed the second number and had to start over again. "Going to lunch now?" he asked. He leaned against the locker next to mine. He watched me fumble with my lock. He made me nervous. I messed up my combination again. Yeah, I answered absently. What was my combination again? 23, 5... So you want to eat lunch with me? I dropped the lock, still unopened. I studied Lucas's face. Deep blue circles rimmed his eyes. He looked awfully tired. "I thought you just might want someone to eat with, since you're new and all," he added. The hairs prickled on the back of my neck. Pete likes new kids, everybody said. Lucas didn't give up. "Are you going to the hide-and-seek game on Saturday? I really hope you'll be there." Alarms went off in my head. They started out as tiny clock radio alarms and grew louder until it sounded like a squadron of police sirens in my brain. "You have to go," Lucas insisted. "Everybody goes." Why is it so important to him? I wondered in a panic. What does he care whether I, the new girl, go to the hide-and-seek game? I could only think of one reason. Oh no, I thought. Lucas is Pete. Chapter 8. Calm down, I told myself. I leaned my head against my locker and concentrated on the lock. 23, 5, 17. Click. The lock opened. "So how about it, Randy?" Lucas persisted. "Want to eat with me?" "Don't get angry," I said to myself. "Stay calm, and stay away from him." I dumped my books in the bottom of my locker. "I can't," I told him. "Oh, okay." He drooped a little. "I promised David and Sarah I'd go over the math homework with them," I explained. Well, it was true. "David Slater?" Lucas straightened up. "He's such a jerk." "No, he's not," I said. "He's very nice." "We'll eat together tomorrow then," Lucas insisted. "Right?" "Well," I hesitated. "Right, Randy?" "Sure," I agreed queasily. "Tomorrow." I watched him slowly walk down the hall toward the lunchroom. A little shiver raced through me. Does the Pete inside him want to tag me in the Fear Street woods? "Stop," I ordered myself. "Consider the facts. 1. Lucas looks tired. 2. He seems to like me, the new kid. 3. He wants me at the hide-and-seek game. But that's not enough to prove Lucas is Pete. I'm going to find out for sure, I decided. If I'm positive that Lucas is Pete, I can avoid him at the game. I won't let him catch me. I don't want to spend the next year with a disgusting boy ghost, or any ghost at all. I grabbed my lunch and hurried off to meet David and Sarah. I found Sarah at a corner table in the back of the cafeteria. "David's in line getting ice cream," Sarah explained. "Listen, Sarah," I said breathlessly. "You've got to help me." "Help you what?" "I think Pete has taken over Lucas's body. I'm going to spy on him until I find out for sure. Will you help me?" Sarah stared at me as if I'd gone crazy. "Lucas?" she cried. "No way." "I think so," I insisted. "You know what he did? He asked me if I'd eat lunch with him." Sarah slapped her hands against her cheeks in mock horror. "He asked you to eat lunch with him? That's terrifying." I sighed impatiently. "Listen. Then he said something about me being new, and then he said he'd hope I'd be at the hide-and-seek game. Plus, he looks tired, probably from staying up all night in the graveyard." Sarah tapped her chin. "I don't know, Randy. It sounds kind of silly to me. I mean, I'm not even sure if I believe in all this Pete stuff. We were just trying to scare you at the sleepover." I wasn't sure if I believed in Pete either, but if there was nothing to the stories, why had they lasted all these years? Why were some kids, like Anita, truly afraid of him? I had to find out, before the game. I nudged Sarah. "You won't help me?" "Help you what?" David sat down, slurping on an ice cream cone. "Randy wants to spy on Lucas. She thinks he's Pete." David laughed. "Lucas? No way." "That's what I said," Sarah pointed out. I turned to David. "I want to find out for sure, and Sarah won't help me. And, well, it would be kind of scary to spy on Lucas alone. Will you help me, David?" David gaped at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Come on, David," I pleaded. "It makes sense. If we know who Pete is before the game, we can stay away from him. And you don't want him to tag you, do you?" "No, I don't," David said. "But what if he catches us spying on him?" "He won't," I assured him. "We'll be extra careful. Please, David. He glanced at Sarah, who shook her head as if to say, Randy is nuts, and we might as well accept it. Okay, David said. I'll help you. Thanks. I feel better already. When should we start? David shrugged. How about tonight? You guys are crazy, Sarah declared. Maybe, I replied. But when June 10th comes, David and I will know who to hide from. Who knows, Sarah? Maybe Pete will tag you. I waited until after dinner, when darkness approached. I'm going out for a walk around the neighborhood, I told Mom and Dad. Can I come? Baby squealed. That's just what I need, I thought. Baby tagging along. No way. You can't come, I told her firmly. I want to be alone. Be careful, honey, Mom said. Don't stay out too long. I won't, I promised, pushing open the kitchen door. But secretly I thought, I'll stay out as long as it takes. I met David on the corner of Fear Street and Park Drive. You ready? He asked. Ready, I replied. We walked to Lucas's house. Lucas lived on Fear Street too, not far from my house. We stood across the street, hiding in the shadows. There were lights on in Lucas's kitchen. I saw a woman in the window. Who's that? I whispered. Looks like Lucas's mom, David said. Washing the dishes or something. We waited. So far the only movement was Lucas's mother in the kitchen window. This could get pretty dull, I thought. What if Lucas doesn't come out? I asked. What if we waste the whole night standing here for nothing? Shh, David whispered. Look. The front door opened. Lucas appeared. He hurried down the steps and across the front lawn. He started down Fear Street, toward the woods. David and I ducked behind a parked car until he passed. Then we followed him. We stayed on the other side of the street. I prayed he wouldn't notice us. He walked briskly down the street, whistling. The tune sounded familiar. What is that song, I wondered? I know it from somewhere. He whistled it over and over. At last, I recognized it. I remembered singing it as a little kid. A funeral march. The words went, Pray for the dead, and the dead will pray for you, simply because there's nothing else to do. I glanced at David. He knew the song too. Creepy, I whispered. Why is he whistling a funeral march? Maybe it's Pete, David suggested, remembering his own funeral. I shivered. We passed by my house. I glanced at it longingly. So warm and cozy and safe. Maybe I should run back inside and forget all about this, I thought. But Lucas kept walking, and David did too. It was nice of David to come with me. I couldn't let him down now. And anyway, I had to find out the truth about Lucas. We reached the Fear Street woods. Lucas turned off the road and disappeared into the trees. David and I crossed the street. We hesitated at the edge of the woods. It's awfully dark in there, I said. I heard Lucas's footsteps crunching over the twigs and leaves. They moved deeper and deeper into the woods and further away from us. We're losing him, David exclaimed. He started into the dark, dark woods. My feet didn't seem to want to follow, but I forced them. I didn't want to be alone. I listened for Lucas's footsteps, trying to follow them. This way, David whispered. We shuffled through the shrubs, but Lucas's footsteps grew faint. After a few minutes, I didn't hear a sound. Where did he go? I wanted to call out, Lucas, where are you? But I knew that would be stupid. I didn't want him to find us. We stumbled through the woods, trying not to make noise. No sign of him now. Lucas had disappeared. He was lost in the shadows. Then I heard noises off in the distance. I listened hard. David, do you hear that? He froze, listening. It sounded like kids' voices. Kids' voices shouting something. A breeze fluttered the leaves. The sounds grew clearer, carried on the wind. I thought I heard a shout of, Ollie, ollie, oxen free. There were giggles, and then, You're it, you're it. What's going on, I wondered. Maybe it's Pete. Maybe he's practicing for the hide-and-seek game. I tagged you. You're it. I shivered in my shorts and t-shirt. It's June, I thought. I shouldn't be cold. But the breeze blew across my skin, and the hair on my arm stood straight up. A childish voice screamed, Run home! Run home! David grabbed me by my arm. Sweat dripped down his face. We've got to get out of here, he cried. He yanked on my arm. I didn't have a chance to say a word. We tore through the woods as fast as our sneakers would take us. I could barely keep up with David. A little boy began to chant.
5, 10, 15.
"Come on, Randy," he shouted. "Hurry up." I think he was even more scared than I was. The Fear Street woods loomed around us like a pitch-black maze. I dodged trees and branches, trying to keep up with David.
45, 50, 55.
The boy called. "Please don't let Lucas spot us," I begged. "Please let us get out of here, okay?" "This way," David cried. He pointed to a light up ahead.
70, 75, 80.
The boy's voice grew higher and shriller. I didn't know what the light was. I hoped it meant safety. I aimed my body at it and pumped my legs as hard as they could go. As I ran, I heard the little boy cry,
100. Ready or not, here I come.
Chapter 9. The light swerved past, a car's headlights. It led us safely out of the woods. David and I stood panting on the curb. Then David started chuckling. A few seconds later, he was laughing his head off. "What's so funny?" I demanded. David gulped air, trying to catch his breath. "Us," he gasped. "We got scared of a bunch of little kids." He's right, I realized. We heard a bunch of kids playing in the woods and ran out of there screaming bloody murder. "I'm glad none of our friends saw us," I said, laughing with him. "We'd never live it down." "Help! Help! It's a bunch of little kids!" David pretended to scream. "Oh no! It's a first grader!" "Look out!" I joked. "He's got finger paint on his hands." "We're too jumpy," David said. "Pete probably doesn't even exist." "Yeah," I agreed. "We let a stupid story scare us silly." But inside, I wasn't so sure. The next day, Lucas waited by my locker again. Luckily, I saw him ahead of time. I turned around and walked in the other direction. My lunch sat in my locker, guarded by Lucas. I patted my pockets as I hurried away, wondering if I had any change. 50 cents. Enough for an ice cream sandwich. I didn't mind. It was better to skip lunch than end up eating raw animals every night. "Randy, you're starting to scare me," Sarah whispered. "I have to know for sure," I murmured. We all gathered on the bleachers in the gym, boys and girls together. Sarah and I sat with Chris and Carla. "Why else would Lucas go into the woods at night?" Sarah said. "Either he's Pete or he's up to something strange. You ought to stay away from him, Randy." "But I still don't have enough facts. Lucas might not be Pete, and I need to know one way or the other before the game. It's only 3 days away now." "What are you guys whispering about?" Chris asked. "Nothing," Sarah replied. "Why won't you tell?" Chris whined. "What do you think is happening?" Carla interrupted her sister. "We never have gym with the boys." Usually the girls had gym by themselves. The boys had their own gym teacher, Mr. Shriek. "I bet we're going to learn judo or something," Chris guessed. "Like self-defense?" I asked. "Yes." Chris's voice raised in excitement. "Maybe we'll learn how to flip the boys over. Wouldn't that be excellent?" "If only," Carla murmured. "But I can't imagine Miss Mason teaching us self-defense." Miss Mason wore an awful lot of makeup for a gym teacher. Her nails were bright red and always perfectly manicured. If you threw a ball to her, she wouldn't catch it. She'd just let it go and make you chase it. I guess she was afraid of chipping a nail. She was careful about her hair, too. She dyed it white blonde and must have used gallons of hairspray on it because it poofed around her head and never moved. She didn't like to go outside on windy days. She seemed to have other things on her mind besides teaching gym to 12-year-olds. "Okay, everybody," she called out, clapping her hands together lightly. "I think Miss Mason has a crush on Mr. Shriek," Chris whispered to me. Mr. Shriek had a weightlifter's build, a head of wavy, glossy dark hair, and a mustache. He liked to walk around with his chest puffed out. Mr. Shriek whispered something to Miss Mason. Miss Mason giggled. "See?" Chris gloated. "Gross," I said. Miss Mason clapped her hands again. "I guess you're wondering why the boys and girls are having gym together this week. Well, I'll tell you. We'll be learning something new and different. If not judo, then karate," Chris wished aloud. "Please, please, please." "Something I think you'll all enjoy," Miss Mason went on. "Square dancing." We all groaned. Mr. Shriek blew his whistle. "Hey, let's quiet down now," he cried sharply. We quieted down. Miss Mason said, "I know you're all excited, but you won't learn anything if you keep talking." She paused. Mr. Cirque and I will demonstrate the steps. Then we'll put on a tape of real country music, and you all can try it yourselves. Mr. Cirque himself will be the caller." Miss Mason seemed to think this was very exciting news. No one in the 6th grade got worked up about it. "First of all, you'll all need to choose partners. If you have somebody in mind, go ahead and choose him or her. If you don't have a partner, we'll match you up with somebody." No one moved, but everyone started talking. "This should be good," Carla commented. "I bet you anything Laura picks David," Chris said. "You watch." But no one made a move to pick anyone. Miss Mason clapped her hands for the zillionth time. "If you don't want to choose your own partners, Mr. Cirque and I will be happy to choose for you. I don't care who I'm with, as long as it's not Jeff Fader," Carla declared. "He's so gross." Carla, Chris, and I all leaned forward to peek at Jeff Fader. He sat in the front row of bleachers, picking his nose. "Yuck!" Chris cried. Suddenly, from behind us, a girl's voice rang out. "I choose David Slater." I turned around. It was Laura. "What did I tell you?" Chris crowed. David slumped down on the bleacher and turned dark red. The boys around him slapped him on the back, laughing. Miss Mason shouted, "That's the spirit, Laura. Thanks for getting things started. David, you and Laura can come down onto the gym floor. Anyone else?" For a few seconds, no one said a word. "No one wants to do this dumb square dancing thing," Carla whispered. "Why doesn't Miss Mason give up?" Then, from the middle of the crowd, Lucas shot up. "I choose Randy Clay," he called. Chapter 10. Lucas chose me. This time no one laughed or clapped. The bleachers stayed quiet. Chris and Carla stared at me with twin pairs of wide eyes. From down on the gym floor, David gave me a meaningful look. "Pete likes new girls," they said. "Pete's going to choose you. Lucas chose me." The facts were adding up. "All right, Lucas," Miss Mason called. "Randy, where are you? Randy is the new girl, right?" I sat glued to my bench, my legs shaking. I didn't want to be Lucas's partner. I didn't even want to learn how to square dance, but that was beside the point. "What am I going to do?" I whispered to Chris and Carla. Carla shrugged. "I guess you'd better go out there." Lucas made his way down to the gym floor. "Randy?" Miss Mason called. "Oh, Randy, I know you're up there somewhere. Come down so we can get things started." Laura's friend Maggie stood up and pointed at me. "There she is," she cried. "That's Randy." Miss Mason was losing her patience. "Don't be shy," she chided me. "Hurry up." I slowly climbed down the bleachers and stepped onto the gym floor. Lucas stood off to the side, waiting for me. "We'll have to do swing your partner," I realized. "I'll have to touch him. I'll have to touch a dead person." My stomach rolled over. There was no way I'd square dance with a dead guy. "Miss Mason?" I said in a weak voice. "I feel sick." She frowned. "You do look a little pale." My stomach churned. I really didn't feel well. "Maybe you'd better go to the nurse's office," Miss Mason said. I hurried out of the gym. I felt Lucas's eyes burning into my back as I left. "You know, it really wasn't so bad square dancing," Carla said as we emerged from the Division Street Mall. I'd gone to the movies with her and Chris and Sarah. It was 8 o'clock and not quite dark yet. "You might have had fun, Randy," Chris added. "We didn't have to talk to our partners or even touch them that much, except when it was time to swing around." "If anyone would have swung me around, I would have thrown up," I said. I felt sick just looking at Lucas. "Get over it," Carla scolded. "Lucas ended up dancing with Marcia Lee, and nothing bad happened to her." "I think you're getting crazy over this hide-and-seek game," Sarah agreed. "I mean, no one's really sure if Pete exists." I bristled. "You're the ones that told me about him, and if it's not true, why do you keep playing this game year after year? Why do kids end up in the sane asylum with their hair all white, never to talk again? It has to be true." Chris looked scared. "She's right." "Come on, you guys," Sarah said. "This game is just for fun. If it's a little scary, that makes it more fun." "We know lots of kids who have played," Carla insisted, "and nothing bad has ever happened to them." All right, I thought. So I'm a wimp. But the more I see, the more I believe Pete exists. We crossed the mall parking lot and started down Division Street. At Park Drive, we split up. Sarah, Chris, and Carla caught a bus home to North Hills. I stood on the corner, waiting for my bus. It didn't come. After about 10 minutes, I decided to walk home. It was a warm night. and still light out. It got dark quickly, though. I began to walk faster. I was late, and I knew Mom would be worried. I could hear her scolding me already. I specifically told you to be home before dark. Too late for that. It was totally dark now, but I was almost home. I turned the corner onto Fear Street. Up ahead, I saw the Fear Street Cemetery. I couldn't help wishing I had made it home before dark. Passing the cemetery is okay in the daytime, but it's not my favorite place to be at night. I hurried past, trying not to think about the voices I'd heard there, trying not to even look at the place. But something moved near one end of the graves. It caught my eye. I couldn't help it. I had to look. Something white flashed in the darkness. I moved a little closer. I heard the sound of a spade in the dirt, the sound of digging. A boy crouched near one of the graves. His face was close to the dirt, as if he were sniffing the ground. I ducked behind a tree to watch. It was Lucas. He pulled something out of the ground and held it up in front of his eyes. It was purple and slimy, and I could see it moving, wiggling and twisting in Lucas's hand. A worm. Yes, Lucas cried. And then he did something that made me sure I'd been right all along. Lucas slowly lowered the fat purple worm toward his mouth. Chapter 11. I started to scream, but stifled it with my hand. A little squeak still came out. Lucas jerked his head in my direction. I ducked into the shadows. Lucas peered through the darkness. He seemed to be sniffing, trying to catch a scent in the air. I held my breath. Lucas turned away and started digging again. As quietly as I could, I slipped across the street. I hid behind a tree and peeked at Lucas. Had he seen me? He kept on digging, face to the ground. I hurried down the street, keeping in the shadows. I didn't look back until I was safely inside the house. I poked my head out of the door. No sign of him. I shut the front door and locked it. I was safe, for now. Pete controls the body at night, I thought. Now it's nighttime, and Pete has taken poor Lucas out to the cemetery. I shuddered. June 10th is almost here. What if Pete tags me? Then I'll be in the cemetery at night, digging up worms and eating them. I could almost feel a bunch of wiggling, slimy worms in my stomach. "Randy, is that you?" Mom called from the den. I took a deep breath and went in. Mom, Dad, and Baby all sat in front of the TV, watching a police show. "How was the movie?" Dad asked. "Are you hungry? We saved a little chicken if you want it." "It's warming in the oven," Mom added. "I had pizza at the mall." I lied. I'd actually had nothing but popcorn, but I couldn't imagine eating after what I'd seen Lucas do. "You're a little late, honey," Mom chided me. "Did you have to wait long for the bus?" "It didn't come," I told her. "I walked home." Mom and Dad both turned sharply away from the TV to give me their X-ray glares. Dad's voice was low and serious. "You should have called us, Randy. We would have been glad to pick you up." "I know. I didn't think it would get dark so soon." Baby jumped off the couch, blocking everyone's view of the TV. "Ooh," she squealed. "Randy's getting in trouble." "Be quiet, baby," I grumped. "Not baby, Barbara," she yelled. "Barbara." "Sit down, baby," Dad said. "Barbara." "I think it's time for bed, baby," Mom said. "Come on, let's go up to bed." Baby let out an ear-splitting scream. Mom held one hand to her ear. With the other, she took Baby by the arm and pulled her upstairs. "Get the tranquilizer gun," I joked. Dad frowned at me. "Maybe you should go up to bed too, young lady. I don't like to think of you walking around alone at night." "I didn't mean to," I said. "All right," Dad answered. "Go upstairs anyway and think about it." I went up to my room. I put on a summer nightgown and snuggled into bed to read. I had to do something to take my mind off of Pete. A warm breeze drifted in through the open window, lightly fluttering the curtains. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. I woke up with a start. My bedside lamp was still on. The book had tumbled to the floor. The rest of the house was quiet. What time was it, I wondered? I glanced at my alarm clock. 1 o'clock in the morning. I pulled down my bedsheets and switched off the light. Across the street, all the houses were dark. The street was quiet, except for a faint sound. Voices. Voices coming closer. "I touched you. You're it. He's coming. Run! Ready or not, here I come." I sat up, shaking. The voices came from the woods.
Ollie ollie oxen free.
I leaned toward the window and stared out. At first I saw no one, and the voices suddenly stopped. But then something moved under the light of the street lamp. A boy. A boy darted out of the shadows. He flashed through the pool of light. I didn't get a very good look at him. He came from the direction of the woods. Then he disappeared down the street, toward Lucas's house. It had to be Lucas, I thought. Or Pete. I wasn't sure how to think of him. But I was scared. He's chosen me, I thought. He's after me. I'm going to be Pete's next body. Chapter 12. Be good, girls. Dad kissed me and Baby on the forehead. We won't be back too late, Mom said. If anything happens, call us at the Lewis's. Sarah's parents had invited Mom and Dad over for dinner. I left their number on the refrigerator. And don't forget, Baby goes to bed by 8, Dad added. Barbara, Baby protested. You keep forgetting. Dad was busy looking for his car keys. Sorry, Baby. Baby pouted and stamped her feet. Sometimes I feel sorry for her. No one ever listens to her. But then she'll do something obnoxious, like accidentally squirting me with her squirt gun, and I wish she'd get kidnapped by aliens. Preferably aliens whose favorite food is 7-year-old girl. Baby started whining. I don't want to go to bed at 8. Why can't I stay up like Randy? You can stay up late when you're Randy's age, Mom said soothingly. Just think, that's only 5 years away. Baby burst into tears. 5 years? That's a long time. She ran to her room wailing. Thanks a lot, Mom, I said sarcastically. Mom had Baby upset, but I had to go calm her down. Mom leaned down to kiss me goodbye. Sorry, honey. She'll quiet down soon. Dad opened the front door. Mom grabbed her purse. Say hi to Sarah, I called as they settled into the car. They drove off, waving. Baby and I were alone in the house for the evening. I'd babysat for Baby before, of course, but not on Fear Street, until tonight. I dragged myself up to Baby's room. Please don't let her go into full tantrum mode, I prayed. Please let her be good tonight. Being alone with Baby when she's in full tantrum mode was my worst nightmare. Even Mom and Dad couldn't handle her then. Once she threw a quart of milk on the floor. The carton exploded like a bomb. Milk splattered all over the kitchen. Another time, she tripped me while I was helping Mom clear the table. I was carrying a stack of dirty plates. They flew face down on the dining room rug. Mom had to take the rug out to get it cleaned. Baby, I called. How are you doing? I listened for a response. Silence. I didn't hear any crying or whining. Uh-oh, I thought. Is that good or bad? Baby? I peered into her bedroom. She wasn't there. Baby, where are you? I stepped into her room, searching for her. I checked under her bed. I checked behind the door. Baby? What could have happened to her? I pulled open her dresser drawers. She used to hide in there sometimes when she was smaller. Nothing. Baby! I called again. Maybe she's in Mom and Dad's room, I thought. I turned to leave. Boo! The closet door flew open. Baby jumped out at me. I yelled. Baby hopped up and down, laughing. I scared you, I scared you, I scared you. At least it wasn't a temper tantrum. Ha ha, Baby. I fake laughed. You scared me. Very funny. I scared Randy, I scared Randy. Come on, I said, taking her by her little fist. Let's eat supper. After a dinner of microwave pizza and ice cream, Baby and I watched TV. I put her to bed at 8:30. I always let her stay up late when I babysit, and she fell asleep right away. I collapsed on the couch in the den. Phew, that wasn't so bad, I thought, relieved. And it'll be a no-brainer from here on. I couldn't find anything good on TV. I turned it off and curled up on the couch to read a magazine. An hour passed. It was almost 10 o'clock. I rolled off the couch and went to the window. Outside, the world lay dark and quiet. I stared out toward the Fear Street Cemetery, listening. Was Lucas in the cemetery tonight? Was he out there somewhere, digging for food? I checked the front door to make sure it was locked. All of a sudden, I couldn't relax. The house was too quiet. Things didn't feel right. I paced from room to room. Living room, dining room, kitchen, den. Maybe I should turn the TV back on, I thought. It'll keep me company. I switched it on. A police show. Cops to the rescue. I thought I heard a noise. In the hall, outside the den. I froze, listening. On TV, sirens wailed. Behind me, something clattered to the floor. I whirled around. Baby! She stared forlornly at the plastic plate she'd dropped. Cookies were scattered across the floor. I can't sleep, she whined. You have to go to bed, I ordered. Mom and Dad will be home soon, and if you're still up, I'll get in trouble. But I'm hungry, she cried. A little sob bubbled up from the back of her throat. Oh no, I thought. Tantrum on its way. I stood up, accidentally crushing a cookie under my shoe. I felt like throwing a tantrum myself. Come on, baby, I said irritably. Help me pick up these cookies, then go back to bed. You called me baby again, she shouted. I keep telling you, I want you to call me Barbara. I blew it. I tried to hold off the tantrum. I'm sorry, I said, trying to soothe her. I keep forgetting, baby. Oops. She threw back her head and started screaming at the top of her lungs. Shh, baby. She continued to scream. I grabbed a cookie off the floor and shoved it toward her face. Look, I shouted over her screams. Look, baby, a cookie. Don't you want to eat this yummy cookie? She didn't stop screaming. I shook her. I petted her. I made funny faces at her. Nothing could make her stop. She screamed her head off. The neighbors will think I'm killing her, I realized. Then something changed. She didn't stop screaming, but her screams sounded different. They weren't tantrum screams anymore. They were terror screams. She grabbed me and pointed toward the window, screaming. I turned to look. Then it was my turn to scream. Chapter 13. Help! I screamed. Lucas stared at me through the window. Then he disappeared, and the front door rattled. He was trying to get into the house. I raced to the front door and leaned all my weight against it. The door's locked, I reminded myself. He can't get in. Then the lock turned. No! I screamed. Baby, come help me! Baby leaned with me. Tears streaked her face. The door began to open. I pressed against it. No! I yelled. Go away! A mighty shove came from the other side of the door. It flew open, throwing me and Baby out of the way. Help! I shouted. Stay out! Stay out! I hugged Baby, hoping at least to protect her from Lucas. But Lucas wasn't there. Randy, what's the matter? I opened my eyes. Mom and Dad. I didn't know what to say. Randy, are you all right? Dad demanded. What's going on? Mom cried. I felt my cheeks go red and hot. Did something happen? Mom asked. Was someone trying to get in? Lucas! I cried. I saw his face in the window. He's trying to get me. Dad frowned. Who's Lucas? He's Pete, I replied. Mom and Dad exchanged baffled looks. Isn't Lucas a boy in your class? Mom asked. I nodded. I began to realize how crazy I sounded. Maybe it's better not to tell them, I thought. What can they do to help me anyway? Nothing. They can't do a thing. Why would this boy be peeking into our window? Dad said. Maybe I should call the police. No, it's okay, Dad, I answered. I probably imagined it. Mom frowned. Are you sure, Randy? You seemed awfully frightened. I was watching something scary on TV. I lied. It got to me, that's all. I saw him too, Baby yelled. I saw a boy. No, you didn't, Baby, I insisted. That was on TV. It was not. Don't listen to her, I assured Mom and Dad. You know how she makes things up. Dad shrugged. Okay, but if anything else like that happens, let us know. I will, I promise. I saw him, Baby cried. I'm not making it up. Go back to bed, Baby, Mom ordered. We're all going to bed now. Dad tried his soothing voice. That's right, Baby. All of us big people are going to bed. Wouldn't you like to be like us? I'm not sleepy, Baby announced. I'm wide awake. Well, I guess I'll be going to bed now, I said. Have fun, you three. I left Mom and Dad to deal with Baby. That's it, I thought as I trudged up the stairs. I've got all the facts I need. Lucas is Pete, and Pete will do anything to get me. Even try to break into my house. I'm doomed. Chapter 14. Crash! The glass slipped from my hand and smashed on the kitchen floor. Orange juice trickled over the tiles and settled in a crack by the cabinets. Rats, I muttered. I grabbed some paper towels and swabbed at the juice. Be careful of the glass, Randy. Mom watched me, frowning. Are you feeling all right, honey? Sure. I tried to hide my face from her so she wouldn't see how nervous I felt. Saturday, the 10th of June, had arrived. I'd woken up that morning with a small, hard knot in the pit of my stomach. The knot grew bigger as the day went on. I tried to read. I tried to watch cartoons with Baby, but I couldn't sit still. I paced through the house like a caged animal. Randy, you're making me nervous, Mom said that afternoon. Why don't you run out to the store for me? I need a pound of ground beef. Run out to the store? Does she actually want me to go outside? I can't, Mom. Why not? It's a perfectly lovely day. You could use some fresh air. I really don't feel like it. She plunked some money into my palm and pushed me out the door. Go, she ordered. 1 pound of lean ground beef. Thank you. The street seemed oddly quiet for a Saturday afternoon. Usually the neighborhood is full of kids out playing or whizzing around on their bikes. Not that day. There wasn't much traffic. I saw one man mowing his lawn, but mostly I had the feeling people were holed up inside their houses, especially the kids. I imagined them sitting nervously at home, storing up their energy. They'd need it for the game tonight. No one wanted to be tagged by Pete. No one wanted to be it next year. Sarah called during dinner that evening. She almost whispered into the phone. Don't forget, the game begins just after dark. How could I forget? It's all I've been able to think about for weeks. Listen, Randy, Sarah went on. Suppose your crazy idea is right. Suppose Lucas really is Pete. All you have to do is stay away from him. He won't be able to tag you now that you know. She's right, I thought. I'll just stay away from him, and I'll be fine. I'll meet you there, I said. Great. Sarah sounded relieved. See you tonight. I returned to the table. Baby wolfed down her meatloaf. I wasn't very hungry, but I tried to swallow a few bites of potatoes. I needed my strength. I could feel Mom watching me in that worried way out the corner of her eye. Dad ate cheerfully. Big night tonight, huh? He said to me. Looking forward to it, Randy? I kept my eyes on my plate. Uh-huh. A good game of hide and seek. Sounds like fun to me. You'll be part of an old Shady Side tradition. Yeah. After tonight, you'll feel like a true citizen of the town, he went on. You'll bond with the other kids. It's like an initiation or something. Clearly, Dad didn't know what he was talking about. I wished he'd be quiet. Mom spoke up. It's not dangerous or anything, is it, Randy? No, I answered in a small voice. I hate lying to my mother. How could it be dangerous? It's a simple game of hide and seek. Relax, honey, Dad said. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. I want to play hide and seek, Baby demanded. When you're older, baby, Dad told her. Your turn will come. I want to play now. Behave yourself, baby, Mom warned. You want to get sent to bed early? My name is Barbara. I set down my fork and watched Baby from across the table. It was weird to think that in a few years she'd be in my place. She gets on my nerves, but I'd hate to see her get controlled by a ghost. She doesn't bother me that much. I pushed my chair away from the table. May I be excused? You've hardly touched your dinner, Mom noted. I speared a bite of meatloaf and popped it into my mouth, just to make her happy. I'm full, I replied, chewing. I'm going upstairs to lie down for a while. As I left the kitchen, I heard Dad saying to Mom, I'm sure it's nothing, honey. She's probably nervous because she doesn't know too many other kids. Don't forget, she's the new girl at school. That's right, I thought as I trudged up the steps. I'm the new girl, and Pete likes new kids. We all gathered on the edge of the Fear Street woods. This part of Fear Street had no street lights. Clouds shifted over the half moon. Some kids carried flashlights. From a distance, the lights looked like giant eyes. My heart raced. I wandered through the crowd of kids my age, hoping to find Sarah or Chris and Carla. I peered into people's faces, searching for someone I knew. They stared back at me. Our eyes would meet for a second, then dart away. I think everyone felt as nervous as I did. No one said much. Then I saw someone I knew. Lucas. He started toward me. Stay away from me, I silently screamed. I can't let him near me. I dodged away. I tried to lose myself in the crowd. I didn't know where I would hide. but it didn't matter, as long as I avoided Lucas. Mr. Cirque, the boys' gym teacher, stood off to the side. He watched us, his face strangely grim. I wondered why he was there. Slowly, silently, more kids arrived. We hovered around, expectantly. Everyone kept an eye on Mr. Cirque, as if waiting for some kind of signal from him. At last, he waved his flashlight. We crowded around him. Mr. Cirque spoke in a low, solemn voice I'd never heard him use before. "Welcome, kids. As you know, tonight is the 10th of June, Pete's birthday. You're here to participate in an old Shadyside ritual, a game of hide and seek. Generations of Shadyside kids have played. You are following in the footsteps of your parents and grandparents. After tonight, none of you will be the same." Mr. Cirque gave a creepy mad scientist laugh. A couple kids snickered, but most didn't even smile. We listened to every word he said, more quietly and more obediently than we ever did at school. "For the majority of you, the game will be just that, a game," Mr. Cirque went on. "But for one of you, there is a great deal at stake. I think you all know what I mean." My stomach flipped. Not me. Don't let it be me. "The rules are simple. No flashlights allowed. You'll leave your flashlights here by the road. At the signal, you'll run into the woods to hide." We all turned our eyes to the woods. They stood deep, dark, and silent, ready to swallow us. He patted a huge, gnarled old tree. "This is home base. If you touch it on your way out of the woods, you're safe. But you must stay in the woods and hide for at least half an hour. No one is safe before half an hour passes." He paused. None of us moved. We waited to hear more. My heartbeat throbbed in my ears. At last, Mr. Cirque spoke again. "I guess you all know who's it." No one said a word. We all knew. It was Pete's birthday. Pete was it. Mr. Cirque cleared his throat. "Good luck to you all, and please be very careful." Someone struck a match. In the glow, I saw Sarah's face. She lit 12 candles. 12 candles on top of a big birthday cake. Two girls I didn't know helped Sarah lift up the cake. The candlelight threw weird shadows on their faces. Across the top of the cake, scrawled in red frosting, I saw the words, "Happy Birthday, Pete." Everyone began to sing Happy Birthday. I'd never heard Happy Birthday sung so grimly, but then I'd never been to a birthday party for a ghost before. I joined in. We sang very slowly. We're all secretly trying to put this off, I thought, to put off playing this game for as long as we can. The song ended. Everyone stood still as statues, waiting. Waiting for what, I wondered. What is the signal? I saw Sarah's mouth twitch nervously in the candlelight. Suddenly, the candles went out. Only, I didn't see anyone blow on them. The woods were pitch black. The game had begun. Chapter 15. Everybody ran. Sarah and the other girls dropped the cake. Splat. It smashed in the dirt. Kids trampled it as they raced into the woods. We all spread out. Sarah glanced back and saw me. She beckoned me to follow her. I shook my head. Pete would find two of us more easily than one. I stopped a few yards into the woods. Which way to go? I heard footsteps behind me and turned. A boy ran straight for me. Lucas. No, another boy. He brushed past me and disappeared behind a tree. No sign of Lucas. Safe for now. I scurried along a narrow path, deeper into the woods. Kids ran everywhere. I heard shrieks and laughter and screams all around me. No one had found a place to hide yet. I had to get away from them. I had to go deeper into the woods. I peered through the darkness as I ran. My feet crunched on low shrubs. My thoughts raced. Quiet, I told myself. You've got to be silent. Where can I hide? These woods are huge, I realized. I felt lost in them. All the other kids seemed to have disappeared. I kind of wished I'd see someone I knew. Sarah or Chris or somebody. Anybody but Lucas. I pushed on into the woods. I'm all alone, I thought. No, I'm not alone. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I tried to listen. My heartbeat pounded in my head. I stood still. Twigs crackled. Footsteps behind me. I glanced back. Who's there? I didn't see anyone, but I heard someone. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Getting closer. Maybe it's Sarah, I wished, or some other friend. But the longer I stood there, the more scared I felt. I took a deep breath. I can't wait to find out who this is, I realized. I have to get away. I started to run again. I ran faster. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Closer, closer. I swerved off the path, hoping the footsteps wouldn't follow. I crashed through the bushes and low branches. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Headed right for me. Still closer. Someone was chasing me. Chapter 16. I whirled around. Lucas? No, no one. The footsteps had stopped. There was no one behind me. Forget it, I told myself. Keep running. I plunged blindly through the woods. I dodged the trees in my way. Branches snapped in my face, stinging my eyes. I came to another path. I paused. Crunch, crunch, crunch. There they were again. The footsteps. I spun around. The crunching sound stopped. I strained my eyes, staring through the darkness. No one there. I wish I had a flashlight, I thought. Why aren't we allowed to have flashlights? No time to worry about it. I turned onto the new path and raced on. I stumbled over rocks and roots, panting. I can't run much farther, I realized. I've got to rest. The footsteps kept getting closer and closer. They'll catch up to me soon. I've got to hide. But where? Nothing around but trees. Got to hide in a tree. I grabbed the nearest branch and pulled myself up. I climbed as high as I could. The bark scraped my hands. I settled in a crook of the tree, catching my breath. I stared down. I should have picked a taller tree, I thought. Maybe then I could spot Lucas coming. Now I can't see anything but leaves. At least they'll hide me well. Pete won't find me. He'll never see me up here. I sat for several minutes, perfectly still. Not a sound in the woods. What happened to those footsteps, I wondered. How much time has gone by? 10 minutes? 15? How will I know when half an hour has passed? I wish I had a glow-in-the-dark watch. No, Pete would see it for sure. I clung to the branch, waiting. The tree began to shake. I froze. Calm down, I told myself. It's the wind. It must be the wind. I hadn't heard any footsteps. I hadn't heard anyone approach. So it has to be the wind, right? The tree shook harder, too hard, and I didn't feel any breeze. It wasn't the wind. My mind raced. Stay here, stay here. I'm safe here. I must be. But all at once, I knew I wasn't safe. I knew it. I felt it. Hot breath on my neck. Someone was in the tree with me, right next to me. So close, he could touch me. Chapter 17. I was afraid to look, but I had to. I twisted my head around. A boy. A boy sat beside me in the darkness. Not Lucas. David. Blonde David in a white t-shirt. It was easy to see his pale hair and pale shirt in the faint moonlight. I started to breathe again. What a relief. It was only David. "Hi," he whispered. He shifted, and the branch shook. "Shh," I hissed. "Careful, you're making too much noise." I was glad to have him there, though. Maybe I was wrong to try and hide alone, I thought. It's too scary. It felt better to have company. "Don't worry, Randy," David said. "Pete won't get you as long as you're with me." I smiled. David's nice, I thought. He's really the best person who could have turned up. He spied on Lucas with me. He understands how scary it is. "I'm glad you're here with me, David," I whispered. "We'll be safe now." He nodded. "Everything's going to be fine." We sat in silence for a long time, waiting. "Maybe we can make a break for it soon," I murmured. "We could run for home base together." "Soon," David answered. "Not yet." The woods were completely silent. I felt good. It was almost over. Then I noticed a funny smell. A faint odor of garbage. I sniffed. Or maybe rotten vegetables. Where was it coming from? The smell grew stronger. "Do you smell anything?" I asked. "It's gross." David shook his head. "I don't smell anything." "Funny," I said. The odor grew worse by the second. I began to feel a little sick to my stomach. "It's as if we're hiding in a garbage truck," I said. "Worse even." David shrugged. And then I realized the smell came from David. David smelled funny. David smelled horrible. At first I felt embarrassed. I shouldn't have said anything, I thought. Maybe he forgot to take a bath or something. But the smell kept getting stronger. Worse than someone who never takes a bath. Worse than 50 garbage trucks. I choked. I wanted to hold my nose, but that would have been rude. I studied David more closely. His white shirt had a stain on it, a dark stain the size of a quarter, right on his chest, Didn't think much of it, but when I looked at him again, the stain had grown. Now it was as big as a CD. He smelled bad, and his shirt was stained. I never knew David was such a slob. I pointed to the stain. "What happened?" I asked. "Did you spill something?" "In a way," David answered. Strange. Now his voice sounded funny, too. Not quite right. Not like David's usual voice. A bit higher. Without thinking, I slid away from him a little. "This game's so stupid," David said. His voice changed more. "Pete's not so bad. I don't know why everybody tries so hard to get away." His voice had completely transformed now. Not David's voice at all. I sat frozen in the tree, staring at him. The stain spread across his shirt, slowly growing bigger. "What is everybody so afraid of?" the boy beside me demanded. "Pete always gives the bodies back. I give them back as good as new." Alarm shrieked in my head. "I." He said I. The boy smiled at me. He didn't look like David anymore. His teeth were crooked, rotten and black. His breath blasted me in the face, hot and stinking, and the stain on his shirt began to drip. Drip, drip. A drop fell onto my hand. I held my hand up to my eyes and stared at the drop. Dark red, warm, blood. He was Pete. Chapter 18. "Don't worry, Randy," Pete croaked. A decayed tooth fell out of his mouth as he spoke. "It won't hurt a bit. It's not so bad to let me take over your body. Think about it. You'll never be lonely." I didn't wait around to hear more. I scrambled out of the tree as fast as I could. The bark scraped my hands, but I didn't care. "Don't run," Pete called after me. "I'll catch you. You can't get away from me." I jumped out of the tree. I fell 10 feet, landing on the soft dirt below. Then I sprang up and raced for home base. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I could feel Pete's hot, stinky breath on the back of my neck. I stumbled through the woods. Branches clawed at me. I slapped them away. Pete's heavy footsteps pounded behind me. I had no time to think about which way to go. I ran. I hoped I was headed for the edge of the woods. I had to get to home base. If I could tag that oak tree, I'd be safe. I heard Pete's voice, almost in my ear. "It's hopeless, Randy," he called. He wasn't panting or out of breath. I guess ghosts don't get tired. But I knew I couldn't run much longer. Where was that stupid oak tree? Then I heard voices. Kids' voices. I swerved toward them. I saw it. The edge of the woods. Home base. Kids stood by the oak tree, waving flashlights. "Hurry! You're almost home," they called. "You won't make it," Pete's voice cried. "Give up now, Randy. You can't beat me." No, 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 no. I won't give up. I won't. I'm going to make it home. The tree stood only a few yards away. I held my arms out in front of me, reaching. Something caught my foot. I stumbled and lost my balance. I fell flat on my face. I was trapped. Chapter 19. "No!" I screamed. "He's got me. He's going to take my body. Would it hurt?" I scrambled to my feet. Pete reached out to tag me, his fingers less than an inch from my arm. "Hey, Pete!" a familiar voice called. "What are you going to do? Spend a whole year in a girl's body?" Pete hesitated. He turned and peered into the woods. Lucas appeared between 2 trees, dancing around like a boxer. He laughed. "A girl named Pete? That's a good one. We'll have fun all year teasing you about that." Pete stared at him, growling like an animal. "Come and get me, Pete," Lucas taunted. "Or should I say, Patina?" Lucas disappeared behind the trees. "Do you have to pick on a girl, Pete?" he yelled. "Afraid you can't catch a guy?" Pete tore after him. "Go, Lucas!" I screamed. "You can do it!" A boy in a green t-shirt cut in front of Pete, charging toward home base. Pete turned and lunged toward the boy. He missed. He spun around and headed back in the direction he had seen Lucas. I realized I hadn't tagged home. I threw myself at home base. I didn't just touch the tree. I hugged it. I was safe. Safe forever. Or at least for a whole year. But what about Lucas? I stared around the woods, searching for him. I heard someone crashing through the bushes. Did Pete catch Lucas? Or had Lucas found a new place to hide? Can't believe how wrong I was, I thought, panting. Lucas wasn't Pete. It was David all along. and I asked him to help me spy on Lucas. Kids still darted through the woods. I clutched the tree, safe, listening to their shouts. Who was Pete chasing now? Sarah suddenly appeared, dashing for home. She slammed against the tree. "You made it!" I cried, hugging her. "We're safe." She nodded, catching her breath. We hung around waiting for other kids to come in. Megan appeared, and then Carla and Chris. I watched for Lucas, but I didn't see him. A good sign, I thought. The longer he's out, the more likely it is he got away from Pete. "That was fun," Chris exclaimed. "It wasn't scary at all." "Sure," Carla joked. "You weren't scared. You only screamed every time I touched you." "Well, you could have been Pete," Chris protested. "Pete almost got me," I told them. "But Lucas saved me." "Lucas?" Sarah sounded confused. "But you said he was Pete." "He wasn't. David was," I explained. "No way," Megan shot back. "You're making that up, Randy." "I am not. David was Pete. He chased me, but Lucas saved me just in time." "I'm sure David was just having fun with you," Megan insisted. "He's not Pete." "He is." Why wouldn't they believe me? Sarah rolled her eyes, and the other girls giggled. "Ask David. He'll tell you," I demanded. We glanced around, but there was no sign of David. "You'll call him tonight and get him to go along with your story," Megan said. "You'll see," I told them. "Monday morning, David will come into school with gray hair or something. Then you'll believe me." "I'll believe you got him to dye his hair somehow. That's what I'll believe," Carla teased. More kids sprinted out of the woods and tagged the tree. They milled around with their flashlights, talking and laughing. Mr. Cirque blew a whistle. "Game over," he announced. "Until this time next year." Everyone clapped and cheered. We were all so happy the game was over. Kids started to wander away in groups of 2s and 3s. "Has anyone seen Lucas?" I asked. "I saw Lucas as I was running for home," Chris answered. "Was he all right?" I asked her. Chris shrugged. "He looked fine to me." "He probably tagged home while we were talking and then left," Sarah suggested. Good, I thought. Lucas is okay. Maybe Pete couldn't catch anyone this year. I've got to go apologize to Lucas, I decided, and thank him, and explain why I avoided him all this time. More kids headed out of the woods. People waved their flashlights. "See you next year, Pete." I said goodbye to Sarah and Chris and Carla. I walked home alone. It had been a terrifying night, but it's over now, I thought. Alone in the dark, I don't feel afraid. I don't feel afraid of anything anymore. I felt so happy. No more Pete. On Monday morning, I strolled through the halls, keeping an eye out for Lucas. I didn't find him, so I went to class. "I hope you and David got your story straight," Megan teased. "He'll back me up," I insisted. "You'll see." But David never showed up. The first bell rang, and Miss Hartman closed the door. David's seat was empty. Where was he? A boy whispered something to Megan. She passed it along to me. "Somebody heard David had to go to the hospital," she whispered. "Do you think?" I nodded. Poor David. Sarah and I passed the baseball field after school that day. Shadyside was playing hardstale. I hadn't seen Lucas all day. I couldn't wait to talk to him. We settled in the bleachers to watch. Lucas stood on the pitcher's mound. He whizzed the ball past the hardstale batter. "Chris said she heard David's okay," she told me. "He's supposed to get out of the hospital tomorrow." "What's wrong with him?" I asked. "I don't know. Some kind of virus or something." "I'm telling you he was Pete. That's what made him sick." Okay. "Strike 3. Lucas struck out the first batter. Sarah and I clapped. "What are you going to say to Lucas?" Sarah asked as we watched the game. "I'm not sure," I replied. "I guess I'll explain that it was a misunderstanding. Sounds kind of silly now." Shadyside beat Hardstale 5-3. I hung around, waiting for Lucas to come off the field. Sarah nudged me. "I guess you want to thank him by yourself. Call me and let me know what happens." "Okay," I agreed. She gave me a playful little wave and dashed off. Lucas ambled off the field. He carried his bat over one shoulder. His baseball mitt hung off the end of it. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he said back. He smiled. "That was some game of hide and seek the other night, wasn't it?" "Yeah," I agreed. We began to walk toward home. "Are you all right?" he asked. "You didn't get hurt or anything, did you?" I'm fine, I answered. How about you? Are you okay? Great, he grinned. He took off his baseball cap and pushed a lock of curly dark hair off his forehead. He's really cute, I thought. Why didn't I notice that before? I took a deep breath. Apology time. Lucas, I can't believe what you did for me. Pete would have gotten me for sure if it weren't for you. No big deal. He put his cap back on, shrugging. It's a big deal to me, especially since, well, I guess I haven't been very nice to you. You kept running away from me, he said. I did notice that. Well, I can explain, I stammered. See, I thought... I paused. It seems so stupid now, I'm embarrassed to say it. We crossed the street. He looked at me, waiting to hear what I had to say. His expression was so friendly, I decided to go for it. I thought you were Pete. Lucas laughed. You thought I was Pete? Why? This part was embarrassing, too. Should I admit that David and I had spied on him? No, I decided. I may like to get all the facts, but that doesn't mean I like to give them all. Well, I began. One night, I happened to be passing by, and I saw you in the cemetery. You were digging worms, and I thought Pete was looking for food. Now Lucas laughed really hard. So, I went on, what were you doing? I was digging worms. Night crawlers. But not to eat, to use for fishing bait. Oh, I laughed with a relief. Fishing. Why didn't I think of that? Then I remembered another strange thing. Can I ask you something else? I began. Did you come to my house one night and look through the window? I was sure I saw you. He laughed again. I did. I was passing your house on my way home from digging night crawlers, and I heard this terrible screaming. Screaming? Oh yes, of course. Baby. And I thought maybe you were in trouble. I saw a light on and ran to the window to make sure you were all right. Then my parents came home. I finished for him. And what happened to you? I felt weird about peeking through your window, so I ran away. We turned onto Fear Street, both laughing. The sky instantly darkened. I noticed that happened a lot on Fear Street. I paused for breath. Lucas kept laughing. He laughed harder and harder. His laughter began to sound weird to me. Not so jolly and happy. More raspy and harsh, as if he had a cold or something. I glanced at him. His face looked strange and distorted. His mouth twisted into a crooked grin. Or was it a scowl? The trees are throwing shadows on us, I thought. That's why he looks creepy. He squinted at me, his eyes glittering. He rasped. Pete really wanted you. My heart began to pound. There was no reason to be afraid of Lucas now, I ordered myself. You got away from him. Lucas's voice sounded angry. That wasn't supposed to happen. What? I didn't understand. Then I smelled something bad. Rotten. That same rotten odor I smelled in the woods. I stared at Lucas. His face twisted horribly now. His mouth pulled into a tortured grimace. His eyes bulged and crossed. The skin on his cheeks tightened over the bones. He opened his grotesque mouth to speak. His rotten breath blasted into my face. It wasn't fair, he yelled. I really wanted you. He grabbed me. No, I screamed. Pete. Chapter 20. His hand gripped my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. I didn't care. I ripped my arm away and ran. You can't get away from me, he shouted. I'm going to get you. I don't want Lucas. I want you. No way, I thought, but I didn't waste any breath yelling it. I turned in the direction of home and ran. I had to take the shortest way. I didn't care if I had to run through other people's yards, or through the woods, or the cemetery, the Fear Street Cemetery. I was headed straight for it. I can't turn away now, I thought. It's the fastest route home. I glanced back. Pete was speeding toward me. If I paused for 1 second, bam, he'd catch me. I didn't hesitate. I raced through the cemetery gates. Stay calm, I told myself. Just cross through the cemetery, then you'll be safe. Behind me, Pete's footsteps echoed closer and closer. Give up, Randy, he yelled. His stinky breath washed over me. Pete likes new kids. I pumped my legs harder. I nearly tripped over a headstone. I dodged it. I jumped over another one. I trampled over the graves, crushing old dead flowers underfoot. Then a hand reached up out of a grave, and grabbed my ankle. Chapter 21. I wrenched my ankle free. I glanced back. There was no ghostly hand, just a vine of ivy straggling across the path. And pounding closer, Pete's heavy steps. I jumped to my feet and started running again. Don't worry about the graveyard, I scolded myself. Don't worry about the ghosts. There are no ghosts, except Pete, and that see-through girl standing in front of me. What? See-through girl? She opened her mouth and blasted me with icy breath. Home base is the other way, she shrieked. I stopped dead. A ghost girl. I started to run around, but the other way led to Pete. Trapped. And then I heard them. The sounds that had been haunting me at night.
Ollie, ollie, oxen free.
Childish voices shrieked all around me.
Ready or not, here I come.
One by one, they rose from their graves. Ghost children, pale white, nearly transparent. Girls and boys of all ages, all dead, all ghosts, icy cold. You're it, they screeched. You're it. They crowded around me, howling and moaning. Their ashen faces were small and sweet, but twisted with anger. They wore old, tattered clothes, long dresses and torn skirts, and schoolboy knickers rotting apart. What are they going to do to me? The screaming grew louder, their breath icier. I shivered in the sudden chill. I scanned the cemetery, searching for a way to escape. They pressed in, closer, closer. Anyone around our base is dead, they shrieked. I covered my ears against their shrill voices. I spun around. Pete leaned against a tree, watching me. I was trapped. One of the ghost boys noticed Pete. You loser, the ghost boy yelled. Not good enough to play with us, right, Pete? Stupid humans are the only ones you can beat. The ghost children danced by me, taunting me. You can't get away now. Oh no, you can't get away. Try to escape, a dead girl whispered. I dare you. Help, I screamed. Help! But the ghost voices grew louder and shriller, covering my screams with their own. 5, 10, 15, 20. No one would hear me. No one would save me. Pete was ready to pounce on me if I ran. The ghosts moved closer and closer. They closed in on 3 sides of me. Pete waited behind me. 45, 50, 55. They're counting to 100, I realized. And then what will they do? What happens when they get to 100? 90, 95, 100. That's it, I thought. It's all over. No, I ordered myself. Don't give up. Hey! I yelled as the ghost flew at me. I thought only loser ghosts play with humans. You were no better than Pete. Pete's a loser, a boy shouted. Loser, loser, the others taunted. Yeah, Pete is a loser, I yelled. He couldn't even catch me, a human, in the hide-and-seek game last night. Pete howled in fury. You cheated, he shrieked. But I'm still going to win. Pete lunged at me, but the boy ghost slid between us, chanting, Pete, Pete, smelly feet, give me something good to eat. More ghosts circled around Pete. Stop playing with stupid humans, Pete, a girl chided. Yeah, Pete, screeched another ghost. You're such a loser. What's the matter? You afraid of us, Pete? You don't seem so scary now, Pete, I taunted. You're afraid to leave that human body, aren't you? I could see Pete. The ghost whipped around him. Pete's face popped out through Lucas's. His mouth twisted with anger. His eyes bulged. One of the ghost children tweaked his nose, and Pete jerked his head back inside Lucas's body. Pete, your mom says get out of that body and back into your grave, right this minute, the ghost girl teased. Are you too scared to play with us, Pete? They shouted. You have to pick on stupid human kids. Most of the ghosts stopped paying attention to me. They circled faster and faster around Pete. Slowly, I began to inch away. A ghost girl shouted, Hey, Pete, catch! She plucked off her head, bonnet and all, and tossed it at Pete. He caught it and stared at it, horrified. The disembodied head giggled and flew back on top of the girl's neck. I forced myself not to scream. I didn't want the ghost to turn on me. A boy stuck his face in Pete's and blew out his icy breath. Pete shivered. A little beard of icicles formed on his chin. "You're it, Pete," they chanted. "You're it, you're it, you're it." Lucas's body began to shake. It quivered faster and faster. What's happening? For a few seconds, I saw two bodies, Lucas's and another boy's. Pete's smelly, rotten-toothed body, messy hair, freckles, dressed in ragged old clothes, but clear and filmy, like the ghosts. Then Pete pulled himself back into Lucas. "I won't come out," Pete cried. If I ran now, I could get away. No, I thought. I have to save Lucas. "I knew you were afraid, Pete," I screamed. "You were afraid of the other ghosts. You were even afraid to come after me unless you're safe in someone else's body." "Yeah," the ghost children shouted. "If you won't come out yourself, we'll suck you out," a ghost child declared. The ghosts spun around Lucas and Pete. I watched them whirl around like a cold, white tornado. "No," Pete cried. "I want to stay with the humans." The spinning ghosts laughed. "They're too easy to beat," one shouted. "Don't be a wimp. Play with us." Pete's freckly face rose out of Lucas's head. Then his neck was sucked out, and his torso and legs. With a loud thwack, the white whirlpool yanked Pete's body away and up into the air. He struggled as he spun around like laundry in a rinse cycle. They sucked him away, back into the cemetery. They sucked him down into a grave marked Peter Jones. "I want to play with Randy," he protested. Then his head was sucked below the ground. Laughing, the other ghosts returned to their graves. I thought I heard one of them say, "Pete's a spoiled brat. He wants to be it all the time." Chapter 22. The icy wind died. Lucas and I found ourselves standing alone in the silent graveyard. No sign of ghosts. No sign of Pete. It was as if nothing had happened, except to Lucas. I stared at him. His face had turned pale, almost green. But was he really Lucas again? Or still Pete? I sniffed him warily. No bad smell. He was his old Lucas self again. "Are you okay?" I asked. He patted his hair, trying to make it go back down to normal. "I'm okay, I guess," he replied. "Whew. Thanks for saving me from Pete." "I owed you one," I told him. I scanned the graveyard once more. All of the ghosts were gone. And Pete, too. "Let's get out of here," I suggested. Lucas took my hand. We walked out of the cemetery on shaky legs. "You know, hide-and-seek is a real baby game," he said. "Yeah," I agreed. "We're way too old for it." "We sure are," Lucas declared. "I'm never playing hide-and-seek again." "Me neither." And I never did.